Now for the front timing cover. If you haven't done so already, go underneath and drain the engine oil and take the lower oil pan off. I've took out all but about 4 bolts on this oil pan. A ridiculously long process for what it is. And the oil sending unit, low oil sending unit. I say you could probably take a rubber mallet or something and tap this thing off of here. Or pry it loose. And in case you was wondering where all your guide went, some of it's down here in the oil pan. And the other parts are laying on the head. Timing chain area. Some metal. That's nice. Oil pump chain. It's kind of sloppy. And there's the bolts I need to get out to get the timing cover off. I don't see any trash caught up in the pickup screen, but I might peck on it a little bit and spray that out and make sure there's no debris caught up back in the screen. Drag it around with a plastic stick or something to pull out any pieces that might be in it. I've taken 5 10mm bolts out of this lower cover in the oil pan. That's where the little dipstick comes through. Once you get your oil pan off, you go ahead and loosen these and remove these 13mm holding the power steering pump on. There's one up here in the front and this one in the back. Get that hanging off there. And get the power steering pump bolt on the top. Okay, it's free. And there's a hidden 10mm holding the cover on. Once you get the power steering pump off, go ahead and remove it. The top cover bolts are mostly 10mm. And 3 13mm headed bolts, one on the passenger side bottom, one on the driver's side bottom, and one above the alternator housing. I'll go ahead and take those out. I pulled on the bottom of the alternator housing, that thing popped like a cork. Just make sure you got all your bolts loosened up. And it's free and clear to navigate. That's nice. Some more guide pieces, some sand and dirt, rust. Oil tube for this tension arm. Oil separator housing thing. There's a gasket that has to be removed after I get this mess off here. And be sure both your dowel pins are in the corners. .6mm hex head. me Torx bits holding this reverse rail on. Yeah, I'm gonna spray all that out with brake cleaner, wash the debris out. First thing I need to do is get these cam holder blocks on each head, hold the cam in place. I didn't get the hold down block for the spark plug holes, so I stuck this metal bar on there. It'll do the job. I'll just put one on each side in the center cam bearing cap. Okay, I've used this 1/16" wrench to manipulate these blocks into the square holes on the cams. The writing should be facing up on the cams for you to be right. More or less these loops pointing toward one another. Once you get the squares bottomed all the way out, there is a little spacer on the back of those squares on the cam that kind of holds the blocks from actually sitting flush with them. And once they're squared down, this cam here kind of wants to roll out toward the inside of the engine, toward the middle of it. Just kind of hold the slack down a little bit and tighten this hex head in the center of these blocks. And then if you've got the other tool that holds the blocks down, go ahead and install it, tighten it down. I'm going to use that metal piece right there fastened to the center of the bearing cap to hold that outfit down. It has to be flush with the head or the cam will be out of time some. They look pretty good. I think I'll square them blocks up a little bit. Looks like they're angled in some. Okay, there's one down. And it's flat against the ground, or at least the head surface. Now the other side. This passenger side head, which is bank 1, takes the A1, E14. The other side takes the E5. Second bank, driver's side, takes the E5, A5, 8. These are E10 Torx bit bolts on this reversing rail. And an E12 is holding the tensioning arm, or bow arm, whatever you want to call it. The top 2 bolts on this reversing rail are bigger than the lower 3. I went ahead and took this tensioner arm off and pulled this plastic nipple out of this reversing rail, and there's some guts on the back of this reversing rail, like O-rings and an oil restrictor tube washer on that tube there. Let's make sure you account for everything. I'm going to lay this up here with the rest of the junk. Smooth. There's the restrictor plate. There it is. I'll put it back in its home. The new one comes with a new stuff for here anyway, so. Now, that's really nice. I'm going to be changing these secondary chains too. You gotta be bored. At least I didn't get busted from all the shrapnel coming out of here. Now these two bolts here, take the one out of the oil separator first, then take the one out of the engine second. And take a screwdriver down here and release this snap if you need to, and pull this rail off. Guide pin, snap holding it bottom on, oil separator bolt, then block bolt. I'd use a thin walled 10mm to pass through that tube. I don't know if it's just was out of alignment some or what the problem was, but it doesn't look like anything's busted here. There's some gasket material there. Needs scraped off, and this center needs scraped off. And chunks picked out of it wherever they're at. Clear up into here. And spray it all down with brake cleaners to remove residual grease to all the sealing surfaces. Took the bolts out of the end of these camshafts to get the chain off. That's nice. And I'm going to take these bolts out of this tensioner. Get it out of there. They are 11mm. Sucker's got a good bite on it. We go against the block beside that O-ring and pry up under this oil squirting nozzle. Gee whiz. O-ring's holding it. That's really nice. I had stuck a bolt back in this exhaust sprocket so it didn't fall off and hit the floor and get dirty. Now the other side. I think I'll just go ahead and put the new chain, put this side back together, spray it off so I ain't getting too many parts piled up. I took some brake cleaner, degreased the surfaces, keeping it out of the inside of the head area. Just blew the particles of old guide that was caught up in the nooks and crannies, and got some of the cleaner on some of the heavier grease deposits. Got all the loose particles off from the top area. And these tensioners, this has got the oil squirter facing up, so it goes on the driver's side. And then this side had the oil squirter pointing down. This is the one I took off. It is the passenger side. Just look at this oil jacket. It points down, and it'll go back in there. So I need to get the other one, install it. Be sure there's some oil on your O-ring and put it down. I popped this driver's side off, and the nipple stayed in the head, so watch out for that. Tighten these secondary hex nuts down to 14 foot-pounds. Or 19 Newton meters. flip the secondary chain onto the back of the VANOS. There's plenty of oil in there, so there's probably going to be, after a while, when I compress this. Now slip this exhaust sprocket forward on. I've left the torx bolt in it. Just loosen it up quite a bit. Feed the chain over the tensioner and drop the VANOS back in there. These are all left-hand threads. And just snug this stuff back down. Make sure the exhaust sprocket's on the camshaft. I mean, it's still a little loose. Yeah. There's part of the reinstall. I'm going to continue washing the particles out. These chains are a little bit tighter than the old ones. This gasket off, and these ones on the side. Went in and took a fine wire drill brush and cleaned up those surfaces where the metal shim gaskets were seated, and cleaned up some of the neighboring related brackets so the cover don't drag a bunch of crap with it when it goes on there. I've degreased the surfaces. This is the new and improved replacement gaskets.